Generations.
Who benefited? Ships. I mean, an entire shipbuilding industry on the backs of slavery. Who did that?
And the respective ports that had the monopoly of Africans passing through.
We want to talk about these, you know. Who benefited from banking based on slavery?
Industry.
Who? These are the questions that we must ask. Africa, who benefited? For me, and this is one of the things that's causing the anger for me, because and it's righteous indignation. I'm just going to call it what it is, you know. That's causing that for me today when I hear, and I've been seeing these videos on YouTube and so on with African people saying that they are apologizing for the role that African tribal leaders, elders, played in selling Africans into slavery without the proper historical context.
Right.
Without, and for me too, in a lot of cases, understanding. So let's just foreground this. Let's just talk a little bit about this, Roger, because just so our listeners know what is happening and why we are so up in arms. So tomorrow, beginning tomorrow, an African delegation coming into Jamaica is scheduled to apologize for what they are calling African tribal leaders' involvement in transatlantic slave trade. This is going to be happening at the Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference beginning tomorrow, and this is going to be at the Jamaica Conference Center downtown, 2 days. We are concerned about this because of some of what you've heard us say before.
I would say we're not concerned about the event itself.
No.
But that particular.
Right. And we notice what the affiliations, for example, the religious forum, the African Forum on Religion,
right,
and African Forum on Religion and Government. And we notice the makeup of the African Forum on Religion and Government. And we notice what is being pushed in terms of what the new religion that is being pushed on Africans, that's coming from the West. Africans have the oldest form of worship, oldest spirituality, oldest religion.
Mm-hmm.
But we notice that through the African Forum on Religion that we see a whole westernized version of Christianity.
Literally pushing aside our ancient traditions.
And so the concern is real. Now, we want to understand this. We want a historical perspective because we are all up in our feelings, Roger, as we listen to Africa Unite in the background, the Africans Unite in the background. Are we justified in feeling disturbed and frustrated, literally tearing out our hair? As far as this is concerned, I suppose at the end of the day, it is for us to debate that. But at the same time, what is the perspective of the historian, and how are we to view this? What context, and how are we to understand this if we are to understand it any at all? And then we must also ask ourselves, what really happened then?
Yeah, indeed. And this also could be a very symbolic event for the naysayers and those who are, especially among us, who would want to say, see that? Your own African people come and tell us that them apologize. They were the one. This is giving strength to the many persons, especially those who are also on the airwaves here in Jamaica.
Yeah.
Giving them strength now. If this should go through, that see that this is the forefront. They'll go as far as say, see that this is the main reason why all of us come across here.
And this thing we're not talking about reparations is damn foolishness because they're already saying it to us.
Yeah.
The fight is already as difficult as it is.
The ridicule is serious.
It's serious. And here is a church complicit in all of this. And the question for me is why? Why? Why now? Why at this time? And why not then if you're going to do this, then you have to juxtapose the church right beside it.
Exactly.
The church also has to apologize, but not also has to apologize because the black people don't need to apologize for nothing right now. But the church,
that's what we're saying. Yeah.
The church has to apologize for the role it has played in the enslavement of Africans and the continuing oppression and neocolonialism against all Africans.
Yeah, because remember, church and state at the time were juxtaposing and they were one focus.
Look at the miseducation, the colonization of education still coming through the church.
Right.
So the church.
Wonder why we are still.
Yeah. So why are you putting it off on Africans? But anyway, let's go to the phone lines where Professor Vereen Shepherd is standing by. Want to have a quick chat with Professor. Well, a little bit quick because we need to put this in perspective in a way, and we don't know of anybody better who can help us to contextualize it. So Professor Shepherd is the director for the Center for Reparation Research. She's co-chair of the National Council on Reparations and vice chair of the CARICOM Reparations Commission. She's a member of the United Nations Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, and she hosts Talking History on Nationwide 90 FM. Professor Shepherd, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us inside of this special program.
Good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening to Roger.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to all your listeners. Thank you for asking me to throw some light on some historical issues.
Right.
And we need some serious light on this one, if you can help us, Vereen. I don't know if you heard us in the introduction and what your immediate response would be, but what do you know, if anything, about what is about to happen from your perspective as a co-chair of the National Council on Reparations and also the director of the Center for Reparation Research?
Here is what I know. And by the way, I have not seen the program to this day, so I don't know exactly the schedule of events. But I did pick up from different people who called me that at 8:30 tomorrow will be the opening ceremony of the second conference of the Jamaica Christian Diaspora. And I didn't know about it before a few days ago. Well, let me explain. I was asked by a member of the organizers to receive an apology from a group of Africans who say that they represent some of the chiefs of West Africa, and am to receive an apology. I said no, I could not do such a thing. First of all, I don't know in what capacity I was being asked to receive such an apology, and I didn't know who the people are, have no information about who the people are, and in any event, I had no mandate from the National Council or anyone to receive such an apology. And so that's the first time I knew about it. Then I proposed something else. I said, well, if you are going to go ahead, I don't agree that this should take place right now without context.
Yes.
If you're going to go ahead with this, well, let me as a historian and a responsible advocate help you by contextualizing the whole thing. So I was not, that proposal was not accepted. So that's what I know, and that's how I became aware of what was taking place. So let me say something else now. Apologies are standard in terms of interpersonal relationships. I think we know that. It's a normal part of people's interaction with each other. And but what I don't understand is why people don't take responsibility. In other words, you can't just apologize and leave stuff there. You have to there are three components of an apology. You have to admit the wrong and take responsibility for it. You have to commit to repair. And in our case, we're talking about reparatory justice. And you have to commit to non-repetition. So an apology without the accompanying components really is like what a Prime Minister of Australia said some years ago. It's like a clanging gong. If an apology is not accompanied with reparation. I'm not aware that the people who have come into our space and who insist on doing this have any plans to go further
Than just apologize.
Leaving an apology up in the air like that. It might make the people feel good, but it doesn't really help the movement for reparatory justice. No, I can give you an idea of the other thing. Let me say the third thing. Many African chiefs and governments have already apologized. I think we know that in 1999, the government of Benin made an apology, right? President Matthew Kerikou apologized for his country's role and the role of the Kingdom of Dahomey. 1999 also Ghana. 2005 Brazil.
1997 Ghana.
1990 Ghana was first before Benin.
And it's interesting, Professor, because in 1997, in Ghana, it was it wasn't just Ghana. It was just Ghana. It was the entire continent that had gone for that event, and representatives from the entire country, but also from the diaspora. And this was led by the Central House of Chiefs.
Yes.
And so that the chiefs would have already, so this idea that the Queen Mother is coming in to do this is don't really make any sense, because the Central House of Chiefs...
It has already happened. They have all done it. And also, the churches, some of the churches have already done it, but they have not done it. They have not accompanied the apology. In fact, the apology has not been made in our space.
Right, but even at the Central House of Chiefs in '97, the Jamaican representatives, I was covering it. But the Jamaican representatives who sat on the stools and participated in the formal ceremony, and this was a ceremony. When Sister P comes on the line, she'll tell us about that ceremony. Included Muta Baruka, Sister P, and Yassa Safari. They represented Jamaica at that formal ceremony where this was already done, the Central House of Chiefs. So that is just to underscore the point you're making,
right,
that this has been done.
This has already been done. And so I'm not so sure why it is being done again, unless it's a different set of, I can't imagine it's a different set of states involved, because all of the states, the West African states, have apologized. But I think there have been some individuals too in Africa, like Jerry Rawlings, I think, did this separately.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me interject.
And even, so the Church of they're talking about the Church of England having done it. Yes, okay. And the Episcopal Church of the United States of America. And there have been individuals who have made apologies, like Peter Hain of the UK.
What a whole heap of apologies, and we can't get reparations.
Yeah, that's why I want to ask the question now.
So that's my point.
Yeah, what sort of symbolism this would be now that they are coming into Jamaica now
to do that? Well, it's clanging gong, as Prime Minister Rudd of Australia said, if you don't accompany apology with reparation. But I want to go a little further than that to say, to have this without a context is irresponsible.
Yes.
And I stand by that, because, you know why I'm standing by that? Because I'm just coming back from West Africa. And some of us had a sit down with some of the chiefs in what is now the Republic of Benin.
Yes.
Okay? And they gave us a lesson in context. Now, none of us, and it is wrong when people say the reparation advocates don't want to confront the fact that there was some involvement by African elites, because I don't want to mix up the ordinary people of Africa in this. This is a mistake we made when we use a broad brush approach on Africa. Some elites, some chiefs. What they're saying, we need to understand the terror that was unleashed on Africa by Europeans.
Yes.
And they say it's a myth that Europeans only stood by the coast and stood up waiting on people to bring them Africans. It is not so. They were in the interior, and they unleashed a reign of terror. And they put the barrel of the gun to the heads of many people. And I want to read you a paragraph or two, if you'll allow me.
Yes.
From the book called Trading Souls, written by Hilary Beckles and Vereen Shepherd. let me say this, because I don't think people understand that when people put the barrel of the gun to your head, you sometimes have no choice but to behave in a certain way. It says the arms build-up in West Africa, fueled by European slavers, the English especially, transformed the nature of domestic politics and economic relations in Africa. Joseph Inikore, the African historian, has shown that for the short period 1796 to 1805, a total of 1,651,309 guns were imported into West Africa from England alone, an annual average of 161,531,000. Those states that supplied slaves received these guns. Those that did not supply slaves were confronted on the battlefield. And the Portuguese, we point out, were particularly terrible because without trading goods, they actually unleashed a reign of terror on the people in West Africa. And some historians have argued that the engagement of local political and economic elites in the transatlantic trafficking is an indication that African society, only the elite clients in African society benefited, not the entire Africa.
Yeah, go ahead, Vern.
So we have to look at this. I mean, according to Walter Rodney, it was in Angola that the Europeans left behind clear evidence of their greatest violence against Africans in the pursuit of captives. Portugal, for most of the period, lacked the domestic industrial base to generate cheap manufactured goods with which to bribe local leaders, and had to resort to unrelenting armed violence in order to secure captives. Now, the Portuguese slave raids that destroyed entire nations were called by the locals quata. And you would hear the call by the locals and they talked about the destruction of entire communities. So I'm saying context is everything.
It's important here. So then, what do we then say? Because as the topic of discussion tonight, and we phrase it this way deliberately, that vexing apology, why the church is out of line. Do you when you talk about contextualizing things, to what extent do you subscribe, Prof, to the view that on this particular item on the agenda, the Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference is out of line?
It's out of line because you can't just in a country where history is still so little understood, where there is so much misunderstanding about who really should take responsibility for the trafficking and enslavement. And let us separate the two if we wish. Mm-hmm. You can separate the trafficking from the enslavement part if you want to.
Yes.
And then Europeans cannot shy away from the fact that no African chiefs came over here to establish plantations or brutalize people. But that's for another time. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying that there's no one on the program, as far as I know or have heard, I stand corrected, who will provide the context within which an apology may or may not be necessary, right? And also, I'm not hearing anything about the church's complicity with enslavement as investors in the trafficking of Africans.
And that is a point I'm making. I want to get back to that when we come back from this break, Prof. We're going to be joined, Roger, when we come back from the break, by Pan-African attorney at law, Bert Samuels. We pick up right there when we come back, Prof. A quick break. We're back with you inside of our very special program. We went special programming this evening, preempting the normal program because of a developing story in Jamaica today, where we are being told that a group of continental Africans, our brothers and sisters from the continent of Africa, are coming into Jamaica to apologize for what they're calling African tribal leaders' involvement in the transatlantic trade in Africans. And they're doing this at the Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference on October 10, which is tomorrow, 2-day conference. We're asking questions. The topic this evening is that vexing apology, why the church is out of line. My name is Kabu at Kabu.
Roger Haspel here.
And we're joined on the phone lines. We have on the phone lines with our Professor Vereen Shepherd. We are now joined by Pan-African attorney at law, social activist and playwright Bert Samuels. Bert Samuels, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Good night.
Thank you so much, Bert.
Good night.
Vereen is there and Roger Haspel is my co-host. We're going to pick up with you shortly, Bert. But Vereen, I wanted you to go there with the point you made just before we went into the break in terms of a church.
Okay, yes, I was saying that it is irresponsible to not to take responsibility, the church, I'm saying, for their involvement in slavery on this side of the Atlantic. So it is not a complete story that they are painting. You know, we need to acknowledge the role of the church in slavery, and we need to understand that most of the churches most of the missionaries, for example, who were allowed to be in the Caribbean during slavery, were allowed to do so because they were not disrupting the system. People always think that all the missionaries were anti-slavery activists. Not so. Any missionary who preached a contrary doctrine to enslavement was sent away, was deported. We have seen this over and over again in the history. So I want people to be real about the role of the church, not just the Anglican church either. And so...
Well, we need to talk about the Asiento and all of that, yes.
What the church should, I think what the church, it will be better for the church, in my view, at this moment in our history, to join the reparation movement and to use their Christian doctrine of apology and atonement and you know, justice to press those who are really responsible for the trafficking in Africa, the historic trafficking in Africans, to make amends, to apologize and to pay reparations. This is where the movement is now. All the apologies have been made, but the state, the European states are the ones who have not apologized. Those are the ones. I'm not talking about individual mayors and politicians and so on. Slavery was a state-sponsored exercise and enterprise, and we're looking to the state to step up and do the right thing. Those are the voices we need right now. Apologies have all been made by Africa and churches and so on. Reparation, however, has not been, and even these apologies by some of the states to people. And here I'm thinking also of the indigenous people, because this week we are going to be thinking about Indigenous Holocaust Day, October 12th. And it can also be called African Holocaust Day because that is what started the whole enterprise. So we need to understand our history and lobby for the right things and not just engage in feel-good platitudes.
And Bert, you have been looking at this. You've been, watching what's happening. And I know you came to the realization late, like many of us, that this was about to get underway here in Jamaica. Your immediate response to this as an attorney, as a Pan-African attorney, Bert?
Well, as Brian has rightly said, one has to look at who the other players and the proportionate contribution of the other players, and those who benefited mostly from all of this, the European states. There can be, the use of this apology to put the blame on us, our brothers and sisters, that we caused it, and the persons who, like the detractors, like to sell the story that, we need to look at what the role we played before we go to Europe, and they're turning the thing on its head because they're not looking at the main beneficiaries, the corporations in England who benefited from all of this and who we can identify greatly. The great wealth which came from it. We're in Africa, can you find this great wealth coming from our enslavement? But we can find it in Europe, all over Europe. It made Europe as powerful as it was. So we have to be careful that we are not putting a magnifying glass on the role that those in Africa played, and there are those who fought against in Africa who defended their brothers and sisters and fought back.
Mm-hmm.
So the true history is not being told, and you can't afford for that comment. There's very saying that the church must understand its role. I mean, and how the state, those who like over even after slavery, a deacon was hanged, by the state because he dared to use his religion as a liberation theology. Anyone who tried to do that was put down by the state. And Gordon and Vogel tried to use, their religion to liberate the people, and we saw the fate they took. So the church has to examine the role of the state and its own role. I mean, in Barbados, we know that the church owned slaves there and were compensated. So the true history must be told.
Can we look through the lens and say, is it naivety on this new generation of church leaders?
Well, I would go for, that is putting it mildly and nicely. I think it's ignorance. And some of it is willed ignorance.
Right.
And I'm saying this from a position of authority because I've been to many, okay, and I must admit that some of the churches are engaging in seeking the information.
Right.
Some of the churches here in Jamaica, some of them have invited members of the Reparation Council. But after you go there and you talk, you don't see any follow-up. You don't see that they join the movement. You don't see that they're adding their voices. And they simply retreat into preaching a kind of doctrine that will not make advocates, even though I don't understand why it wouldn't, because I think...
it's cognitive dissonance.
I think I would be radicalized if I really went to church and listened to some of the teaching. It's a place, to me, for radicalization. But I don't think the way it is taught, I mean, there's all hellfire and mumbo-jumbo sometimes. I'm sorry to say that, but some of the pastors are not educating themselves, and therefore what comes over is mumbo-jumbo. Some of them are educated, and they're trying their best, but most of them are not teaching people. They are not teaching people to even the critical thinkers, and to believe in social justice. This is what we want, and I want the lesson that they must teach. And for all of us who are in this movement, what we have to try to tell our people are the following. And Kabu, I think when I joined, you were talking about some of this. We have to talk about who conceptualized the trafficking of Africans and plantation slavery, who invested money, who capitalized the enterprise, who built ships and sailed to Africa, who had industries to manufacture goods that fed the trafficking.
Who monopolized?
Like Sweden, for example, that supplied most of the iron that made the shackles and the neck braces and so on. Switzerland, that of course we know offered banking. We have to think about this. Which African built a ship to transport Africans?
We speak about the countries that had respective monopolies on certain respective things that aided the slave industry.
Yes,
but in that respect, then, Birch and Vereen, I mean, so this thing's about to go down tomorrow right here in Jamaica, and I feel an obligation, a special responsibility, ancestral indignation to say to my brothers and sisters coming from the continent of Africa who are about to come in to do this in their willed ignorance, to say, don't even bother with it. Walk away. Don't do this.
They don't have the information, and I've seen this in my talk in parts of Africa. And they say they didn't even know. They thought it was the usual thing that, in their society where they have domestic slavery and all that. They had no idea the kind of brutality and so on that went on. And also, they are not talking about African resistance. I said before that it was not just the elite that we must focus on. We must focus on the mass of African people, destabilized, mutilated, maimed, displaced, and who fought in the Congo, in Angola, Queen and Zinga, and all of them who fought, those who turned back slave ships those who rather jump overboard than come here. You know, these are the stories we must tell, and stop focusing on stuff that has already happened, already gone down, the apologies made. Focus now on the consequences of the apology.
And that's the point. And the ignorance runs so deep that you have people tumbling over themselves to make the same apology over and over and over and over again.
Yes, to feel good. You know,
but at whose expense? Because we don't have the we don't have
at our expense. You see, at our expense, because I have not heard anything about, in the same breath, calling on Europeans who co-opted people into their murderous activity to apologize and pay reparation. I haven't heard that as a part of the dialogue. I offered myself, as a historian, as an expert, I said to the goodly Reverend, who is the chief organizer, I'm offering to provide some context. Just give me 10 minutes on the program. I have not been able to get on the program.
We have invited the organizers of the Operation Save Jamaica, is the registered charity that is involved in putting this together. And they say they are transformational ministry initiatives in the areas of inner city development, education, and advocacy. And notice they say education, and also operate a street pastor ministry in Jamaica. And we have invited them to come on. We have not had a confirmation from them yet, but we are here until 11 o'clock.
Some perspective from them.
Yeah.
I also said that when I was told, well, it's not really about reparation. I said, but I don't understand how you could say reparation is not a part of your program. Because, one, why did you send a message to me to say if I could receive an apology? I don't think that was sent to me because I'm a historian.
No.
I don't think it was sent to me because I'm a host of Talking History, or that I'm Vereen Shepherd, just an ordinary person going about her business. I think it's because of my association with reparation.
And let me ask this, Bert, because it seems as if this is a big part of the activities. I mean, all the information we have seen, if you go on their website, it is a big thing that is, that is being crawled. Is it on the crawler big there on the website? And then if you see the documents that are out, the very first thing it tells you about the president of the Queen Mothers Association of the Central Region of Ghana participating in this, what they're calling the symbolic reconciliation and apology ceremony. So that this is foregrounded. This is a big thing. From your own perspective, Bert, is there any recourse that we have as sovereign people, African people, standing up in our truth and in our African identity to petition the court to stop this? Are it too late?
Well, we're going to be confronted with the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And these freedoms are going to be waved at us. So I don't think that we could mount a case that we could say that, it is to be prevented.
So there's no way. And I went to court, because I realized that I know that Professor Shepherd, just from hearing her talk, she has reached out to them. She's even asked for a space on the stage to contextualize it and has been denied. So where do we go from here? This just happened in Jamaica and just go on because a powerful institution like the church is backing it, or they have some other political power behind them? I mean, why is it that our voices don't mean anything in all of this?
Well, I'm sure that the European states are smiling, would now like to use this as a platform to push back the movement. Public education is the only thing, as I've said recently, that we have to make the Jamaican population know what was happening. I mean, when I visited Ghana, there was a church right at the port where we were being shipped. And, it's such an embarrassment that kind of thinking was allowed to go on, because the Bible was put on its head to, as it were, use scriptures to justify slavery itself. So the church has to look inward before we could have these invitations being given to persons, and to look to see that and speak and preach about the misuse of the Bible to justify our enslavement. That to me should be at the top of the agenda.
Have you noticed, though, Bert and Kabu and Roger, have you noticed that a lot of the pushback, a lot of the focal, a lot of the statements about move on and get over it, a lot of the activities like what's going to happen tomorrow, a lot of the comments by lords and whoever else, prime ministers centered on Jamaica, they take place in Jamaica. I don't think it's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a deliberate act to target the place where they suspect if anything happens, it's going to happen here.
Yes.
That the strongest advocates and voices are perhaps concentrated here, and historically that has been so. And I see it as it's almost as if it's a plot. But it could also be a reflection of the fact that we're having some success, Bert, Kabu and Roger, because the National Council on Reparation, is very active. The CARICOM Reparation Commission in the region is active, but several members are in Jamaica. We have the Center for Reparation Research. So I wouldn't doubt that it's... and this is where we have all the ads about what the EU has done for Jamaica. I'm sure you have heard them and seen them.
Yeah.
And, so I think this is just another one.
But how does this impact, though, both from you and Bert, how does this impact the reparations movement? I mean, we're calling for reparations from the enslavers, those who produced economies on the backs of our ancestors.
And who have continued to benefit, those who have inherited the proceeds of slavery through the compensation money.
How does what is about to take place in Jamaica, downtown Kingston, how does that impact the fight for, the struggle for, and because that is what it is, for reparations and repatriation?
Well, I don't know if Bert wants to take that.
Well, Jamaica is a highly religious country, and it has misinformation being fed to the population. It is very attractive for people to hang on to this, and we know that we've seen persons who are contributing on the side of the enslavers in the local press here. This is going to put fuel and as it will encourage them to put the misinformation out there, knowing fully well how Christianized Jamaica is, and without the true facts being told. When we were sold into slavery, it is our children and mothers who had children, their children became enslaved too. I mean, so that if you look at it, the destruction of family life in terms of those who were born here is something that the enslavers must take total responsibility for.
And look at the education system. Bert and Kabu and Roger, you should find some time to attend at least one of the school's reparation debates going on now, hosted by the African Caribbean Institute of Jamaica. When you listen to the students, and I assume they are being prepared by teachers, you realize the depth of the misinformation and the lack of information that our children have about this aspect of history. It's really, I mean, some of them, I've seen some improvement in some of them, but we have to, I don't know, it's a lot of work because the environment, the tide is against us because of miseducation and because of the way churches go about their business of teaching. It's a very steep hill. But I just want to, remind people that the reparation advocates are not at all denying that there was some involvement of African elites in this bad business. However, I don't know, Bert, you know better than I do that I don't see any system of criminality in which those who conceive of the criminal action do not try to have local participants.
Right.
If you think about narco trafficking, even if you think about the Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, but it magnifies the crime. It does not diminish it. It magnifies the crime. And all economic Kabu, all economic historians have said that the net profit to Africa as a whole was zero.
Exactly, and you couldn't walk. There's nobody at all could walk into Israel and have a conference like the one they plan to have tomorrow. For Jews to apologize for the role that Jews play in the Holocaust.
No.
They could not. They wouldn't get a visa to do that.
Reparation and so on because of that. No one.
Yeah, but Bert, you see, in terms of, because they say it's a symbolic reconciliation and so on, but the reverse symbolism in terms of what will this do to the time to get over it, the move on movement? What will this do for them? If this is allowed to.
From the bootstrap philosophy and the don't beg philosophy.
Yeah, what it will do is reinforce, as I say, the advocates of, it is because we participated, then there's no moral ground in which we could take, to say the enslavers should pay us back, and therefore it's going to be used as a platform to push, an attempt to push this movement back and give them something to hang on to. And we know the whole history of dividing. Years ago, a lot of African people did not embrace us because of this divide they tried to put between us and them, that you were enslaved before. Thanks to Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, and others who showed that we see the African people as our brothers and sisters, and that attempt to say, because they sold us, we shouldn't be their friends and all that. That's very pervasive in the minds of persons who taught the wrong history over the years, that, this dark continent of persons who participated in our enslavement. We should not see them as our brothers and sisters. So it's going to deepen that divide that has been perpetrated by those who want to put the smoke screen over their own involvement.
Yeah. And I think also that we're not connecting the dots either. We see our poverty, we see our underdevelopment, and we're not understanding that if you're set back economically to such a great degree, you can't really catch up and compete as equal partners with those who pillaged your resources and developed their own country and then wanted to be equal partners. No, there's a deficit. And I even made this point to the organizer when I was told, but it is not about reparation. It's about what prescription can we make to help Jamaica to, develop and so on. And so, but that's precisely the argument that we are having. We in the reparation movement are saying it's about development. It's about the fact that at the moment of emancipation and then independence, the Caribbean was left to manage itself without an equivalent of a Marshall Plan. So what we're doing now is what those in 62, in the case of Jamaica, should have done. So it's a big gap and a big responsibility. But I think we should be proud of ourselves for actually tackling something and going against the grain. We would have thought that all black people would be united in this movement, but as Bert says, it is not so. We just have to keep working,
It's not so. Where do we go from here, Verena? Just to wrap up this section, we have.
Well, I don't know what else to do because, as I said, I have tried. I tried and made sure that as a responsible expert, I offered my services. I couldn't do what they wanted me to do because I had no intention of accepting any apology from anyone. But I offered to teach, which is what I do, so that people would understand the context within which they are doing this, and having appealed to the top, what else can be done?
Bert, finally, where do you see us going from here? I'm personally saying to people, go to the conference center tomorrow and say no. But where do we go from here?
Well, we need to, continental Africa itself needs the education. We wanted to tell those who are coming here how we have suffered. They really don't know the depth of the sufferance that we had, and therefore it is for us to educate them too, because they only saw part of what was happening. We have felt it for 300 years here, and therefore our experience here, we need to teach them about what really happened.
I would like to know who's
persons coming for us to tell us that, you know, our participation in all of this.
I want to know where the funding is coming from. I want to know who fund this. I want to know where the money comes from for so many people to be coming in to come apologize for so-called Africans selling Africans into slavery. I want to know a little bit more about the organization itself, and I really want to know about this unity and diversity thing that is choking us right now. This is what it looks like. I have looked at it. It's a mixed situation, diversity, and people think that is something that you should applaud. But for me, it is not. Not when you're using people dressed in African skin to devalue the African experience.
Yeah.
Where was the loud voice when Cameron came here in 2015 and say that we should
get over it,
forget the past and move forward? Where is the church pushback for that?
Well, this is it. This is it. Well, not even pushback. This is a church.
There wasn't a pushback.
No, there's no pushback. This is a complicity. This is we're almost on the anniversary.
This is the thing. Yeah. The social justice issues that the church will come out and be really vocal about. I mean, this is one movement. If there's ever a movement that the church will come out and support, this movement is about justice for the wrongs committed against a people. What better message is there than that for the church?
Well, the church must educate itself. Professor Shepherd, Bert Samuels, thank you so much. I thank you for answering the call at such a short notice, because we're just learning about this today. We're preempting everything else to at least take it to the public space. And thank you so much for being good enough to answer that call.
Thank you, Kabu. Thank you, Roger. And may I repeat, if anybody who wants to get a good understanding of the impact of this trafficking on the continent of Africa and on the people, African people, you have to read Trading Souls, Europe's Transatlantic Trading Enslaved Africans by Hilary Beckles, one of the best historians in the region, the most prolific, and coming up way behind Vereen Shepherd, but we collaborated on this book.
We're going to be reading that. I'm sure that is on the book list. Thank you so much, Vereen. Right. Thank you so much, Bert. Boy, Roger.
Yeah, it deep.
Yeah.
It's very deep, and, we have to act. I mean, we talk about emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. It's not just a feel-good song. It's a real thing.
It's a liberty.
Yeah.
All right, let's do this and come forward.
All right, welcome back to the Running Africa Forum. Roger Haspel here. And sitting in this morning for Kabu Keru. And of course, we are, during the first 2 hours of today's program, listening to a special program that was hosted by Kabu herself and yours truly, Roger Haspel. That was aired last Tuesday. The program facilitated the discussion of the scheduled apology for African tribal leaders' involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. And among those persons coming to do that so-called apology was Nana Dr. Ama Amisa III, the president of the Queen Mothers Association of the Central Region of Ghana. They were scheduled to participate in a symbolic reconciliation and apology ceremony relating to the role of African tribal leaders in the transatlantic slave trade. And that event took place on October 10 and 11 at the Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference at the Jamaica Conference Center. Well, you heard during that program from Pan-African Attorney at Law, member of the National Commission on Reparations, Bert Samuels, as well as co-chair of the National Council on Reparations and host of Talking History Nationwide, Professor Vereen Shepherd. We will go to another section of that program that was aired recently. Let's go to that now.
You're catching us inside of a very special program here on IRI FM. My name is Kabu Ma'atkeru.
And I am Roger Haspel.
And Roger, of course, our topic this evening, looking at that vexing apology, why the church is out of line. The background to that, of course, is that we understand that tomorrow, here in Jamaica, an African delegation led by Her Majesty Nana Dr. Ama Amisa III, President of Queen Martha's Association of the Central Region of Ghana, will be participating in a symbolic reconciliation and apology ceremony relating to the role of what they're calling of African involvement, African tribal leaders in the transatlantic trade in Africans. That's tomorrow here in Jamaica.
So what we are saying is that we have had enough apologies. Apologies has been going on for decades now, and we need action. And we'd rather see the church join the reparations movement, because it is now that time that should be addressed.
And we're asking the church to join us in that, in terms of joining the reparations movement, in the call that we're making for Britain to apologize properly, instead of David Cameron telling us to get over it, and Theresa May walking up and down in Africa, and we see Melania Trump in Africa again.
Giving out white dolls.
White teddy bears in a colonial outfit, reminding us of who we are and who we should be, so that we want more from the church generally. And as you said, Roger, apologies have been made.
Too long now. Too long.
Exactly. And so we have on the phone line Sister P. Sister P, of course, as you know, an activist, somebody who has traveled the continent of Africa, who has participated in many Pan-African events across the continent of Africa. She's a broadcaster, a presenter, organizer of Fuisinting, cultural ambassador. You can catch her on Styles in Portland on Thursdays. Sister P, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us, Sister P, at such short notice.
Greetings, but before I go into this, I really want to say that I give so much thanks for Roger, because it feels, people like myself, we're become elders. I'm an elder now, and so there is this generation out there that we can leave in some capable hands. I feel really good about that.
There you go, youthful Roger, coming from Sister P. You're right, Sister P. And he's another one, because when I said to him, Roger, we have to do something. I know you're in Portland. When we spoke today, our first response was, how do we get there to ensure that we make our voices be heard, to say that to our brothers and sisters coming in from the continent of Africa, you've got it wrong, this is not the way to go. And so that's the first place we looked. We talked about taxi, we talked about taxi fare, we talked about how to get there, and then we said, what do we have in our hand? Yes. Let's use it.
What do we have? We have? And this is exactly what we have.
And this is sometimes that the solutions are in your backyard.
Yes.
So, yes.
So for those, and Sister P, you have made a call, even on the social media, you're saying to the Pan-African community, the Rastafari community, the activist community, the advocates community in Kingston, you have been talking to them on social media. What is the thrust of what you're saying to them?
Well, what I'm saying to them is that, some of us cannot make it, but we're really asking if people can get there tomorrow. Let's get your voices be heard. All across the world, we see where people demonstrate. They have all of these big protests, whether it's the women's or whatever protest. But here we just seem to sort of sit and talk about things and intellectualize about things. And we don't get out there. So what I'm actually doing is appealing to people, and I called them our young warriors in Kingston, and I said, look, you have to be there tomorrow, because we can't make it. I said, Kabu can't make it, I can't make it, so you have to be there tomorrow. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, I do hope that Jamaicans who are concerned about this, who are seeing it from the perspective that we should see it through the lenses of Africa, as Roger was talking about the lenses just now, to go and there's a question and answer segment, I understand. Ask the questions. Let us have a conversation with our brothers and sisters. I understand that the Ghanaian ambassador to Jamaica, who's based in Cuba, is also here in Jamaica, not for the conference.
Not for the conference. And while I was listening to Verena and Birch, I was saying to myself, wow. I called Benjamin and I told Benjamin what's happening, and I said, listen, I didn't ask him if there is some way that we could get to talk to him, to do something. But this really somehow, we have to stop this. This is ridiculous.
Well, I hope that if he's listening, he'll give us a call to speak to this. Sister P, you were in Ghana as a representative of the Jamaican delegation, and it was an official delegation. Tell me, Sister P, let our listeners understand the background to what 1997 was about in Ghana and what happened.
1997 in Ghana, the chiefs from the Central House of Chiefs, and there were some other chiefs there also, and it's like, I think there were some of the Akan chiefs there, but I'm not 100%, but the Central House of Chiefs. We marched through the streets of Cape Coast, and of course, they have these rifles that go off, and it was a whole big fanfare, and then we got into that park. And in that park, this is where they did the official apology.
The symbolic apology, reconciliation and apology ceremony has already, it happened in 1997 for the first time in Ghana, Africa. That's basically, and it was the Central House of Chiefs. And Sister P,
the Central House of Chiefs.
You can tell us some of what happened there.
Well, Muto, Yassos, and myself were the representatives from Jamaica. I think it was James Small and Leonard Jeffries. They were the ones from the United States. And I can't remember exactly the whole ceremony, but we had to go through this thing because, where you have to eat the yam and you have to eat the eggs and all of that was a part of it. Of course, we didn't partake, but they said that we could just put it symbolically
right.
And then,
right. So for those who were vegetarians, when you were given the egg, you took, but you didn't. It was a symbolic gesture.
Yes, it was a symbolic, yes. And it basically is. It was a sort of. I don't even know, but anyway, that is a part of the culture.
Right. But it was a reconciliation and apology ceremony.
It was.
Headed by the chiefs.
And when I see now that it is the Queen Mothers from the Central House of Chiefs, that's a slap in the face to us.
It's a slap in the face.
Slap in the face to us.
We have already done this from the central region of Ghana.
We did it, and we did it over there.
What are you doing here with this damn foolishness? What are you saying to us? It's done. It was done in 1997. Where are you going in Jamaica with this now? And for me, as Sister P, it seems as if, and Vereen kind of hinted at it, but she's pulling it back. It looked like it's a deliberate act to stymie all that is going on here.
But you said something, I was listening to you. You said something. Follow the money. Follow the money. Because really, in truth and in fact, it should be the church apologizing, for the role that they played. They should be the ones that let me put it, the whole Christian thing. Because when you think of what that has done in terms of developing low self-esteem in our people by having a white God representing black people, that to me, that is part of politics. I don't even know what you call that.
And also using scriptures to perpetuate us.
Yes, yes.
I see your thing, man.
And when you think about it, if you just look at what's happening in the United States right now, this is the same evangelical business that is going on, and we just seem to be a part of it.
Right, so you have taken away our God, you have taken away our way of worship, you have taken away our and to the very spirituality, our dignity, our names, our spirituality, and then our own people come forward in this space that so much has been done to us. And talking about you apologizing on the wrong side when you should be joining us in the struggle for reparations and repatriation. Sister P, you are right. It is a slap in the face.
They're talking about Queen Mothers, because we have Jamaicans who are Queen Mothers.
Yes.
And and I don't know how many we have in this. I'm not talking about people like maybe I Marcus.
Yes.
I don't know, people like that. Are you saying that you're representing these people?
From the central region of Ghana, I'm sure you're not representing one Africa. From the central region of Ghana.
Remember,
who are you representing?
They have white Queen Mothers.
But I saw that, and this is what I was talking about when I talked about diversity. That there's something fundamentally wrong with all of this. And you use a term about a slap in the face, and this is exactly what it is. That in 1997, the Central House of Chiefs did this in the way that it should be done, understanding the wider context of this. You know, in the return to Ghana, when they call people from every aspect of the globe, from the diaspora and from the continent of Africa.
Yeah, we were from all over the continent. There were people from the...
And then
remember that whole...
from the
Cameroons.
From Benin, from Togo, from West Africa, South Africa, Middle Africa.
You had people from all over
1997, you know, Roger, this was done. In a big parade, a march on the street that take you to the park. I mean,
it goes back to what I'm saying, that all of these things,
of us marching through the street. That's the diaspora along with Ghanaians.
Yeah, rehash it on the wrong side.
It's deliberate.
Yeah.
Sister P pointed out, and I didn't even realize, that these people are coming from a central region of Ghana. This is the very same place. This is the very same House of Chiefs. It's the very same place.
But I'm not sure, but I thought I heard you say that it's the Queen Mothers from the central...
It is, Sister P. I'm reading Her Majesty, I call her name, from a central region of Ghana. What is the central? It's the same Central House of Chiefs. You heard me say it.
That is the whole area. That is the area that, Cape Coast, Elmina, that's the central region. I think
no African kingdom used slavery as its principal mode of production. None. Right? And I'm reading here. Africa has produced no economies based on slavery. It was left to Europe to create a system of slavery where humans were chattel to be used as tools in the development of wealth. What are you doing here about you apologizing? It's been done.
As they say, follow the money. Follow the money. But the fact, sometimes you really get, I don't want to use the word, because are we so disconnected that these Queen Mothers did not know that we already went through this? That we went through this? I mean, these were some very big chiefs.
It happened in 1997 and documented too. It's not like it's not documented. But I think what it is, Sister P, is when you throw in the westernized Christianity, when you throw in western form of Christianity. Christianity came out of Africa, and this is why we keep saying the western form of Christianity. When you throw that in, then everything else becomes sinful. So the fact that it has been done, and because it was done in the traditional way by the Central House of Chiefs, that was a sinful act.
Well, you have a very big point there. You have a very
you have to baptize it now and make it whiter than snow.
To be respected.
No, so you make it whiter than snow now.
But I'll tell you one thing. I sure am happy that I'm not making it there tomorrow, because if they was to ever bring one of those white Queen Mothers, I would be off. You remember that woman who went into the dungeon with us? Yes. And when she saw the mixed couple in there, you remember how she went off?
I remember, I remember she got physical, because when you're in a space like that, where you are reliving the anguish, because the memory is in the blood, when you're reliving the anguish that your ancestors have been through, and you buck up in the same space, the person who is responsible for that anguish in terms of how they are presenting, then I don't know. Everything is up for grabs. Sister P, thank you so much for reminding us.
I really thank you for allowing me to say my little piece.
For reminding us, Sister P, we're going to talk to Dr. Jeffries now, and we're still trying to get Professor Maureen Warner-Lewis. We're not able to get her, but Dr. Jeffries was also there in 97, I think. But he's always there, so he can help us to put things in perspective. But Sister P, thank you so much. I think that...
Did you get James Moore?
No, and that's why we have Dr. Jeffries. Sister P, thank you so much.
Okay, give thanks.
Thank you so much. Boy, Roger?
Yeah. That thing that happened in 1997 in Ghana, and now, we're seeing now the central region, we're kind of concerned.
We're very concerned. Where you're coming into and Roger, they have been doing this all over the Caribbean. That's the thing that bothers me.
Yeah, because Jamaica is just a part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So we want to tell the church that it is time that you come forward and apologize.
Yes.
You have your...
Here in Jamaica.
Yes, you apologize.
In the Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference, stand up and apologize as representative of the tools of enslavement, which was Christianity through the church.
A lot of the physical structures.
If you...
right here in Jamaica, we're built on slavery.
If you go to the dungeons in Ghana, I think it's Elmina Cape Coast, one of those dungeons, the church is on top of the female dungeon. The church is on top of the female dungeon. You have to understand that.
Yeah, that is
to
deep.
Understand.
That is deep.
Why, as a woman, I am so angry at this moment.
That is deep. And, you know, no wonder where we are, because we still use the slave master's religion, the slave master's way of practicing, and wonder why our progress have been slow. So but these are just some of the fun, and what is going to happen now, it just shows why our progress remains where it is.
And we call upon the Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference to listen to us. We have been walking the walk for many, many moons. We have gone into the dungeons and back. We have studied the history. You heard the historian talk just now. We have lived the history. We have relived the history. We make kenke from memory. Mm-hmm. You know, the memories in the blood.
Right.
And to put us through this again in the name of a church. What are you saying? And who is going to stand up? Who in the church is going to stand up? We take a break and come right back.
Follow me to Mother's for the best breakfast in town. Fresh Jamaican breakfast with ackee and saltfish available every day. Delicious saltfish fritters, smooth and creamy porridges, plus egg, bacon and cheese sandwiches available all day, every day. Mother's, so much better.
It's hurricane season. Keep calm. H&L Rapid True Value has you covered. Tarpaulin, ply, lumber, flashlight, batteries, water tanks, generator, and much, much more. All you need to prepare for the hurricane season is available at H&L Rapid True Value. Build, renovate, decorate.
Think about something that makes you happy. Did it make you smile? We know it did, because that's what we do at Sagicor Life. Put smiles on our clients' faces every day by paying out more claims last year than any other life and health insurance company with very fast claim turnaround times. It's no wonder most Jamaicans choose Sagicor for their life and health insurance needs. Let us put a smile on your face. Call your Sagicor advisor today.
This Heroes Monday, Magnum Tonic Wine Beach Rave at Winifred Beach, Portland, with live performances from Chronic Law and Fire Dubs. Music by Bass Odyssey, DJ Bigafy, DJ Flair, DJ Syrian, Sanjay, and Blinga. Hosted by Cartel Finally. Admission 300 before 5 p.m., 500 after 5 p.m. Magnum Tonic Wine Beach Rave. Must be 18 years or older to drink. Drink responsibly. ID required.
Mix it and win! It's the Lasco Food Drink Money Mixer promotion. You could be a winner of a grand prize of $500,000 in cash, or be one of 48 winners of $10,000 cash weekly, or win fortnightly prizes of $50,000 in cash. Enough cash to be won. All you have to do is send in 5 120 or 90-gram packs, or 3 400 grams empty Lasco Food Drink pack, along with your contact information and the slogan, "Nutrition never tasted so good." Place your entries in boxes provided at over 100 locations island-wide. See the press for details. Now.
All right, so this is the Africa Forum, running African. Roger Haspel here, sitting in for Kabu Keru today, and we are looking back at the program that was hosted by Kabu herself and yours truly, Roger, and the program facilitated a discussion of the scheduled apology for African tribal leaders' involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. And Nana Dr. Anna Amisa III, president of the Queen Mothers Association of the Central Region of Ghana, she was scheduled to participate in this so-called symbolic reconciliation and apology ceremony relating to the role of African tribal leaders in the transatlantic slave trade. We had on the program Pan-Africanist and attorney at law, a member of the National Reparations Commission, Bert Samuels, as well as the co-chair of the National Council on Reparations, Professor Vereen Shepherd. You also just heard from Pan-Africanist broadcaster and cultural ambassador Sister P. And we have another section of that special program And we go to that now.
You're listening to a very special broadcast. We have preempted everything on IRA FM because we feel that this is a special moment, a special time, and we had to address this issue that is unfolding here in Jamaica and is about to unfold tomorrow at the Jamaica Conference Center under the aegis of the church in Jamaica. The Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference is on. We have no problem with the conference, with the Jamaica Christian Diaspora. They have been doing work in the inner city here in Jamaica. They have been focused in the way that they have been focused, and so everybody have their role to play. But where we're having a problem is with one of the agenda items, where we understand that an African delegation is in Jamaica to apologize for what they're calling African tribal leaders' involvement in transatlantic slave trade. Now, this is where we have a beef. We have a problem with that because we're saying that the church must apologize for its role in slavery. The church is complicit in the continued oppression of the Jamaican people through the education and miseducation system, through religion, through the institutions, and we are also saying that the apology has already been done. 1997, in Ghana, the Central House of Chiefs. My name is Kabu.
Yeah, Roger Haswell. And we're saying this is just gonna strengthen the shackle on the brain if you're gonna perpetuate this thing of coming here.
And its time is the reparation movement, and it's deliberate.
We're past that. We need this movement of redress. No, it's all about redress.
Yes, and reparations and repatriation. Repair the damage.
Right.
And don't come here with your African self as dressed in African garbs and to stymie a process where we are beginning to get some movement on reparations here in Jamaica. Let me go to the phone lines where our elder, Professor Leonard Jeffries, is standing by. Dr. Jeffries, good night. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on our special program.
Well, it's always been a pleasure to join the family in Jamaica, connecting us on the mainland U.S., and so I'm glad that I'm available. I had a little bit of a cold under the weather, but when it comes to issues like this, put the colds aside and deal with the hard truth that we have to put out there. And certainly African peoples have to deal with enslavement and what it meant.
Right.
But we certainly don't have to be maneuvered by people who are asking for apologies, and no one has made a serious apology or dealt with the whole question of reparations for African peoples. So I think that it's very timely that there is a proper reaction. African peoples will deal with the question of enslavement among themselves. That has been a problem over the years. But we're talking about the system of international slave trade. And at the center of it is the white system of domination, destruction, and death. And unfortunately, initiating it has been the church. It was the church in Rome that allowed for the enslavement process to take root. And that was when the Pope decreed that Africans were infidels and could be enslaved during the time of Christopher Columbus. And so at that time also, the Pope had the unadulterated gall to divide the world, with one half of it going to Spain for exploitation and enslavement, and the other half of it going to Portugal. So we have to deal with the reality of what enslavement was. It's a system of oppression that comes out of the value system of the European. Africans were sucked into it, and that's a family affair that we will be dealing with. And so apologies and other arrangements within the family have been taking place, and they will continue to take place. But we have to know that the church, from the Catholics through the Protestants, have been involved in the enslavement of African, and there has been no reparations of any kind or repairing of any kind in a serious way.
And Professor Jeffries, I spoke to Sister P just now, and I don't know if you were in Ghana in 1997 when the Central House of Chiefs called us together and brought us through that ceremony, which was a ceremony of reconciliation and apology that took place there during the Panifest of 97. But then it is shocking to us to see our brothers and sisters coming out of Africa to come into a situation where we are struggling for recognition in terms of, struggling for reparations, struggling for voices to be heard to say we demand an apology, proper apology from Europe, and we demand reparations and repatriation from those who enslaved us. To find our brothers coming out of and sisters coming out of Africa, and especially our Queen Mothers coming out of Africa in the midst of all of that, just as a moment when the conversation is really heating up, to say this, that Africans sold Africans into slavery. What would be the thinking and the reasoning behind that, doing that in the name of a church, because it is a Jamaica Christian Diaspora Conference that they're doing that at?
Unfortunately, as Dr. Wade Nobles, one of our great scholars, has said, and he's a serious Africanist, African people everywhere suffer greatly from a shattered consciousness and a fractured identity. And with that shattered consciousness and fractured identity, they have been, unfortunately, socialized out of themselves. And that process continues. And we have to understand it is, unfortunately, deep into all of the church traditions, whether we're talking about the ancient Hebrews or we're talking about the ancient Europeans who, with Catholicism and Protestantism, institutionalized a world church, and as well as the Arab world with Islam. So African peoples have to see this thing in its fullness, and no one has properly adapted to the reality of what Africa needs and what Africa should be getting. But certainly an apology is not called for at this time. In fact, I was there in 97, and every year we've going back and forth to Ghana. I've been started there, going back in 61 was my first trip, in 62, and 63, 64, 65, and went to study there for my PhD, 65, 66. So I've been back and forth, and we have been through a process of rituals and ceremonies that go on annually. The Panifest and the Independence celebration in the Caribbean, the Emancipation celebration, was actually adopted when President Rawlins from the Ghana leader came to Jamaica and Trinidad, and he saw this celebration in reference to the English, and he said, we need to adopt it in Ghana. So there's a combination of the Emancipation celebration, a combination of the Door of Return, a combination of dedicating ourselves to our ancestors. And in fact, at this historical period, the remains of crystal was taken from Montego Bay,
from Ocho Rios,
on a flight to New York and to Ghana. And we took Samuel Carson, an enslaved African in America. Both of them were flown back to establish the process of the return. I remember as the flag draped remains were brought off the plane and put in the vehicle to take them to be in state at the Marcus Garvey house in the Du Bois Center, that somebody was pushing hard to move people out of the way. And one of my sisters from the U.S., Claudia, was pushed out of the way. And I said, Claudia, did you know who bumped you out of the way so she could be right there in the middle? Rita Marley.
Yes. Yes.
Rita Marley. We had the ceremonies. We had the celebrations. We don't need any apologies. We need to come together in a pan-African unity and have a plan for the African world.
Dr. Jeffries, let me say this to you. I was there. I was there. Right. I was in that crowd. I was in the waters when Crystal and Samuel Carson came in on the boat. I was dancing in the water with Professor James Small. I was there with Sister Minnie, God rest her soul, who just passed, the Ancestors Guide her. And we were there. We have been through this. We have done this. And so the question I'm asking, what in the name of everything that is good and pure is going on here? Because here we have out of Ghana at a time when we're saying we have reconciled. The Ghanaian president just announced this week, I think it was, that 2019 is the year of return, understanding that they have been through all of the reconciliation. And so next year is a year of return for Africans in the diaspora to Ghana. It means that we have done this and we are way ahead of this apology. What do we do? What are we to do with this apology, Dr. Jeffries?
Well, I think you may have to approach it like I had to approach my going to Amsterdam to speak. Beryl brought me and others brought me to speak in Amsterdam, and we were going to deal with enslavement because the Dutch were heavy in involvement in the enslavement process of Africans. But our brothers and sisters who were there from Suriname and other parts of the New World, and they were living in Amsterdam, they were upset because some Protestant ministers wanted to apologize for slavery. And so I told them, I said, we cannot deny persons who want to apologize for enslavement, but they cannot take us off of our attempt to try to understand the enslavement process and who was involved and what we have to do to repair ourselves and what we have to do to ask for reparations from others. So I told them, don't get upset. Let them make their apology quickly, and then make sure you have me at the end of the program. And so it worked out wonderful because they did what they needed to say, and then they were out of the way. And then we had a chance to deal with the Dutch involvement in slavery, and it's a heavy involvement. They were the merchants moving goods and people around the triangular slave trade. So that what I think needs to be done, if the convention is already set up and the people wish to make formal apologies or whatever, then after that, then the real discussion, the impact of the system of white supremacy coming out of enslavement. And one of the great Caribbean leaders, Dr. Eric Williams, wrote a classic work, Capitalism and Slavery, in which he outlined as part of his PhD work that it was this combination of this economics of human beings and the links to the land of the New World that created this monster system that we are still dealing with. And no proper recognition of the damage done to Africans has properly been taking place. But certainly steps are in that direction, and there have been many of them. So for the Ghana president to say, we're going to deal with the arrival of Africans 400 years ago off of a Dutch man of war. They were pirating African ships that were carrying Africans, and they dumped them in Virginia, Jamestown, Virginia, in 1619. So the Ghana government, and this is most unusual, has said we're going to use this as a period to reflect on the 400 years of enslavement, and the process is the return spiritually, the return economically, the return culturally, the return in all ways that we can as we Africanize our lives. There may not be a host of thousands of people going to resettle in Africa, but that is a possibility also. And so we have to take the positive that so much has been moving in this direction. The Oni of Ife has invited us to come at the end of Nigeria to Nigeria in order to begin those links. There is going to be a statue erected, largest in the modern world. It's going to be erected in the Cameroons, a statue of an African woman, the mother of humanity. So there are so many things going on in and out of Africa that we need to not let an apology, a misguided apology, stop us from this rise of African peoples that is a must. Yeah. And that we have to deal with reparations and reconstituting our value systems, and deal with the devastation of genocide and messing up the African mind. I always said when I got a chance to make my presentation, We are in a struggle for the African mind, M-I-N-D.
Mm-hmm.
And that struggle includes struggling for the African mind, M-I-N-E.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to exploit Africa in the future, and the present and future, because they want the wealth of Africa to be a part of their world. And so we as Africans have to have a international program to protect Africans from this super exploitation coming from this technology that other people have and are not hesitant to use it. And I apply that not only to the global system of white supremacy, but honorary whites who have been invited in over the last 500 years by the Europeans to join them. And those honorary whites include the mulatto classes all over our world. It includes those who are the Japanese who were made honorary whites in the white system of supremacy in 1905 when they defeated Russia in a war. It includes in the in the oil crisis period of time, the Arab world becoming part of the system of whites. The government of South Africa, the apartheid government of South Africa, had honorary whites among Asians and others. And now the new boys on the block in terms of honorary whiteness in the system of African exploitation, unfortunately, are coming in from Asia. And so we as an African family have to put up our safeguards, and we have to say we need trade and we would appreciate aid, but we do not and will not accept domination, destruction, and death. That period is over for African peoples.
You know, Doc, I want you to go back to something you said earlier regarding, you know, us being socialized outside of ourselves and, you know, with these constant coming together of apologies as to what will be happening tomorrow. I want you to elaborate on that in terms of how have we been socialized outside of ourselves?
The great wealth of the world, fortunately, by the Creator and the creative forces of the universe, has been located on the African continent and places outside of Africa, such as South America and the Caribbean and North America. And so there will be this attempt by others who want to exploit this wealth for their purposes and their systems so that Africans can't come together and pull together their Pan-African global system of taking care of the economics, politics, and culture of African peoples. And so the mindset, one of our great brothers, and he's a great hero, we need to study him. He gave his life in struggle. He was the Malcolm X, the Malik El-Shabazz of his time. Malcolm was in the 50s and 60s, but Steve Biko was in the 70s, and he led the black consciousness movement. And his mind was bashed out of his brain cage because he was such a substantial figure leading the youth. And he said, and we all need to understand that the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And then our great scholars and leaders have looked at that and understood that in an even deeper dimension. Steve Biko said it as he helped develop the black consciousness movement to move away from the mind control that South Africa had imposed upon Africans. And he said the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. But what we have seen since that 76 incident in which he lost his death, that the most potent weapon in the hands of the liberator is the mind of the oppressed. And that's what we've been able to do. Leaders in the Caribbean, leaders in South America, leaders in Central America, leaders in North America, and certainly leaders in Europe and cities of London, Bristol, and Manchester and whatnot. We've understood that we have to take control of the development of the African mind and consciousness and tell the real narrative that we are, in the divine order of things, the foundation of the human family, and that we laid down the parameters of how the human family should operate around what I call the 3 C's, the African value system of communal, living together, cooperative, working together, and collective sharing the wealth together. Whereas we've been caught up in the European value system of dog eat dog, coming out of the northern cradle, in which people are talking about domination, destruction, and death, the 3 Ds, materialism over spiritualism. So we have an obligation to let folks know that they're going down the wrong road, and there is a larger consciousness, a rise of African peoples that will allow us over these next decades to map out a plan of unity and repatriation, and also serious reparations and trade without devastation and super exploitation. And so we have to become totally involved in this process and
not fall
be
asleep
able
on
to
the
point
job.
to an indictment of the European culture, the religion, the history, the economics, the politics of the European American, and unfortunately the Arab worlds, so that we can deal with the renewal of Africa that we have to be about.
Professor Leonard Jeffries, thank you so much. President of the World African Diaspora Union, retired professor at the City College of New York for 40 years, is taught there. He developed one of the largest African studies program while at City College, a PhD and master's degree from Columbia University, joining us at very short notice to help us to understand what is unfolding in front of us here in Jamaica. Thank you so much, Professor Jeffries, as usual.
Well, it's always my pleasure, and you can always call on me whenever you need me. I'm there for you. The Caribbean, South America, North America. We're a family in the Western Hemisphere, an African family in the Western Hemisphere, and we need to build on that and use our strength and our power to help Mother Africa.
Thank you so much, Bob. Thank you so much.
Madasi P.
My best to the family.
Thank you. Same here.
The disenfranchisement of women and the injustice. When the people went to court to try to seek justice, the courts just replied with injustice. That was the context.
And just before we call their names, as we bear witness on behalf of the martyrs of the Morant Bay War of 1865, on behalf of our ancestors, we ask Dr. Arthur Green, Rahu Imatep Kimetba, to give the libation. We're using the Congo libation this morning, and he's standing by to do that. Dr. Green? Dr. Arthur Green, as we come to you live from Morant Bay. Dr. Arthur Green is soaking wet, and it was raining.
Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo. Enzituzo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo. Yenge mwen kembo batatan Zambia ba mpungu tulendo tulenveni. Zenina mwana nkumbu. Yenge, 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 yenge. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo. Zane simbi loa. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo. Zane simbi entonto. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo zamaza zenina muntu yenge yenge yenge. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo zabiminti zenina muntu. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo zabantu zenina muntu. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo zapie zenina muntu. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo zabakulu mwenga Congo. Baba Paul Bogle, Moses Bogle, Letitia Gohagen, Bantu, Zenina Muntu, Yenge, Yenge, Yenge. Matondo tatan Zambia mpungu tulendo, Zamukepe, Zenina Muntu, Yenge, Yenge, Yenge. Ashe.
Ashe. Okay. What is going to follow next will be the group standing in this small space, among others standing outside, who will be calling their names. We call their names as we bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. May I start with you, my sister Amina?
Samuel Walker, shot. Ed E. Wright, shot. John Noble, shot. Skipper Cowell, hanged. Edward Donaldson, hanged. Thomas Edwards, hanged. Robert Graham, hanged. Daniel Johnston, hanged. William Moxie, hanged. Abraham Panton, hanged. Edward Panton, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. Sister Isis.
John Collins, hanged. Robert Craven, hanged. Andrew Hicks, hanged. Richard Johnston, hanged. Joseph Helly, hanged. James Lewis, hanged. Benjamin McDermott, hanged. Philip McLean, hanged. Lewis McLean, hanged. William Martin, hanged. Richard Barkley, shot. William Carr, shot. James Bernard, shot. Robert Blair, shot. George Blunt, shot. Albert Christie, shot. George Clark, Richard Cox, shot. Jack Freeman, shot. Henry Graves, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, the martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. Mucha.
James Lang, hanged. William Logan, hanged. Thomas Kelly, hanged. James Martin, hanged. Matthew Niven, hanged. Frederick Wilson, hanged. Abraham Anderson, shot. Samuel Stewart, shot. Gilbert Thomas, shot. George Robinson, shot. J. Brown, shot. William Carr, shot. D. Brown, shot. Samuel Beckett, shot. B. Grant, shot. Peter Bignall, shot. A. Betty, shot. A. Charles, shot. Fortune Carr, shot. I. Johnson, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
John Flick, hanged. Sam Clark, hanged. Charles Cunning, hanged. James Johnson, hanged. Henry Lawrence, hanged. Alexander Robinson, hanged. Richard Brown, shot. George April, hanged. John Forbes, hanged. William Simmons, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors of the 1865 Morant Bay War. Professor?
Jack Harvey, shot. Thomas Hermington, shot. Samuel Johnson, shot. James Lindsay, shot. Edward Mackenzie, shot. Alan McKay, shot. James Marsh, shot. William Mee, shot. John Price, shot. William Steele, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Lawrence McLaren, hanged. Justina Taylor, hanged. George Taylor, hanged. Charles Farmer, shot. Samuel East, hanged. Thomas Mackenzie, hanged. Samuel Bailey, hanged. William Brown, shot. Richard T. Cousins, hanged. Alex Arnott, hanged. William Taylor, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Francis Stewart, hanged. Richard Thompson, hanged. Thompson Walker, hanged. Charles Brown, hanged. Benjamin Panton, shot. Amelia Stewart, shot. William Hill, hanged. Charles Michel, hanged. Richard Walter, shot. John McCall, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Edward Brown, hanged. Mansfield Panton, hanged. Prince Stewart, hanged. Charles Walker, hanged. Abram Cornwall, shot. James Henry, shot. Thomas Miller, shot. Samuel Richardson, shot. Edward Airy, shot. Charles Reed, hanged. John Redwood, hanged. Joseph Samuels, hanged. James Silver, hanged. Robert Turner, hanged. George Berry, shot. Joseph Berry, shot. William Minot, shot. James Williams, shot. Tommy, shot. Jack Ted, shot. Welling, D. McLean, alias Graham, shot. Joseph Russell, shot. William Morgan, shot. What's up? George Hamilton, shot. William Gillespie, shot. George Rankin, shot. J. Spence, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Your first bag is always free on Caribbean Airlines. Fly daily from Kingston to New York or Fort Lauderdale and check one bag free. Book now on CaribbeanAirlines.com. Conditions apply. The time is
19 minutes past 9 o'clock.
BKB, awesome meals and day. You're awesome, you deserve awesome day. BKB.
The time by Burger King taste rules your way is
20 minutes past 10 o'clock.
Mix it and win! It's the Lasco Food Drink Money Mix-Up Promotion. You could be a winner of a grand prize of $500,000 in cash, or be one of 48 winners of $10,000 cash weekly, or win fortnightly prizes of $50,000 in cash. Enough cash to be won. All you have to do is send in 5 120 or 90-gram packs, or 3 400 grams empty Lasco Food Drink pack, along with your contact information and the slogan, "Nutrition never tasted so good." Place your entries in boxes provided at over 100 locations island-wide. See the press for details. Enter now!
Welcome to Construction's Destiny. Ready-made construction products at the highest quality. IAR Jamaica brings convenience to construction with amazing ability. We manufacture top-of-the-line spec concrete, granite finished masonry, thin sets, and so much more. Low prices. Call 876-765-9258 or visit 708 Spanish Town Road, Kingston 11. Innovative asphalt repairs. Building your vision, creating reality.
This Heroes Monday, Magnum Tonic Wine Beach Rave at Winifred Beach, Portland, with live performances from Chronic Law and Fire Dukes. Music by Bass Odyssey, DJ Bigger 5, DJ Flair, DJ Syrian, Sanjay, and Blinga. Hosted by Cartel Finally. Admission $300 before 5 p.m., $500 after 5 p.m. Magnum Tonic Wine Beach Rave. Must be 18 years or older to drink. Drink responsibly. ID required.
First Regional Cooperative Credit Union Limited is now in Kingston at 133 to 135 Old Hope Road, branching out to serve you better. Telephone 876-972-2424. Serving you now from 12 locations, with branches also in St. Anne, St. Mary, Hanover, and Westmoreland. Yes, we were the Mega Credit Union Award winner in 2015, 2016, and 2017, and we are now in Kingston at 133 to 135 Old Hope Road, Northside Plaza. First Regional Cooperative Credit Union Limited, where you get interest on your money and interest in you.
Wow! I feel good.
Time Tired of suffering from heart problems, diabetes, prostate issues, arthritis, fibroids, hypertension, and other degenerative diseases? Do you want to feel truly healthy, to live your life naturally free from pills, pain, fatigue, physical and mental degeneration? Then call Holistic Alternative now on 876-861-2377 to find out how you can change your life.
It's the Amnesia Nightclub Heroes Sunday Sip, Sunday, October 14. Amnesia Car Park and Club, 70 Main Street, Ocho Rios. Vibes by the World Sound, Bass Odyssey. Admission $500 before 12 a.m., $700 after. Bus trip special before 12 a.m.
The 2018 ISA Schoolboy football season is in full swing with competitive and exciting action, thrills, spills, shocks, and intrigue in both the rural area and urban competitions. The favorites aim to go all the way to maintain their traditional legacy, while the non-traditional schools aim to create the upsets. We'll have all the update scores and point standings to keep you up to date. Coverage of the ISA Schoolboy football season in our 6:15 major sports report comes to you courtesy of Digicel. You can watch all the action in the 2018 Schoolboy football competition when you download the Playgo app, buy a football pass, and stream the live matches right there on your smartphone or tablet, only with Digicel. And Contractor Music Marketing, promoting reggae artist Mr. Specialist with his new single, Got to Win.
How many more times must I cry? Cry till my tear back start run dry. Oh Lord, said I've got to fight.
All right, this is the Africa Forum, Running African, here on your Sunday morning on IRFM. And we are remembering the heroes of the Morant Bay War of 1865.
Ellen Dawkins, hanged. James Donaldson, hanged. Judy Edwards, hanged. Abraham Grant, hanged. Joseph Finn, hanged. James Jennings, hanged. Joseph Sterling, hanged. George Webber, hanged. James Winter, hanged. Alan Rose, shot. Jack Garden, hanged. Iman, hanged. Iman, name unknown, hanged. Iman, name unknown, hanged. Iman, name unknown, hanged. Thomas Darby, shot. Duncan Grant, shot. Dennis Tiohan, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
C. Williams, shot. Thomas Johnston, shot. J. Grant, shot. Charles Thomas, shot. E. Edwards, shot. J. Kelly, shot. L. Cobison, shot. Rose Grant, shot. James Gibbons, shot. Edward Clark, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
John Taylor, hanged. James White, hanged. Francis Cox, hanged. James Gohagan, hanged. Prince MacLeod, hanged. Edward Stewart, hanged. Charles Gardner, hanged. William Mitchell, hanged. William Troop, hanged. Jonah Walters, shot. Sonny McFarlane, shot. T. Crossin, shot. Edward Clausen, shot. George Gale, shot. Joseph Bunting, shot. Alexander Jakes, shot. Thomas Reed, shot. Louis Graham, shot. Edward Eason, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. Dr. Hunt.
Thomas Davis, hanged. Charles Gohagan, hanged. Letitia Gohagan, hanged. Louis Miller, hanged. William Stevens, hanged. James Stewart, hanged. William Thompson, hanged. James Williams, hanged. William Robinson, hanged. George Colburn, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. Professor.
Jasper Livingston, Heng. John Mackenzie, Heng. Edward Sterling, Heng. John Sterling, Heng. Colin Reed, Heng. Edward Wilson, Heng. Francis Vista, Hell. C. Wheeler, shot him. Alexander Basson, Heng. Robert Beecher, Heng. James Medden, shot. Francis Graham, shot. James Wellington, shot. William Wellington, shot. Edward Williams, shot. William Bailey, hang. Robert Crawford, hang. G.H. Deans, hang. William Francis, hang. William Martin, hang.
We call their names. We on behalf of our ancestors of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Richard Sherrington, shot. Richard Brown, shot. Jasper Telford, shot. Thomas Stewart, shot. Abraham Kelly, shot. Simon Wilson, shot. Thomas Ross, shot. Charles Smith, shot. Robert Francis, shot. James Reed, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
George Lindsay, hanged. James Lindsay, hanged. Simon Titus, hanged. Edward Miller, hanged. Thomas French, hanged. Joseph Garvey, hanged. James R. Smith, hanged. John Thompson, hanged. John Miller Reed, hanged. Edward Spence, hanged. John Murray, hanged. Alexander Wilson, hanged. Henry Edwards, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. John Edwards, hanged. Richard Ellison, hanged. Richard Grant, hanged. Henry Griffiths, hanged. Robert McGregor, hanged. George McIntosh, hanged. Edward McLean, hanged. James Mitchell, hanged. Joe Mitchell, hanged. Edward Morrison, hanged. We call their names.
William Gray, shot. Sidney Lyne, shot. Charles Logan, shot. James Davis, shot. Abraham Harris, hanged. Smart Papley, hanged. Charles Douglas, hanged. James Stewart, hanged. Edward Reed, hanged. Robert Dyke, hanged.
We call their names.
Henry Patterson, shot. William Minard, shot. William Manning, shot. Fenderson, shot. Dougal Lindsay, shot. Daniel Copeland, hanged. Thomas Darlan, hanged. William Grant, hanged. Joseph Henry, hanged. Henry Holgate, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, the martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
George Lindsay, hanged. James Lindsay, hanged. Samuel Titus, hanged. Edward Miller, hanged. Thomas French, hanged. Joseph Garvey, hanged. James R. Smith, hanged. John Thompson, hanged. John Miller Reed, hanged. Edward Spence, hanged. John Murray, hanged. Alexander Wilson, hanged. Henry Edwards, hanged.
Wow.
One man,
continue.
Name unknown, yes. One man, name unknown, shot. John Bundy, shot. Robert Cuthbert, hanged. Thomas Drisdale, hanged. John Gibbons, hanged. Thomas Johnson, hanged. George Marshall, hanged. Edward Lewis, hanged. John Mackenzie, hanged. Samuel Noyes, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. We bear witness on behalf of the marchers of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
All right, this is the Africa Forum running African Roger Haspel here, still holding the fort for Kabu Karoo today, but we are here remembering the heroes of the Morant Bay War of 1865.
Francis Stewart, shot. Thomas Walker, shot. Samuel Valentine, shot. William Watson, hanged. John Webber, hanged. William West, hanged. Joseph Williams, hanged. Thomas Williams, hanged. Donaldson, hanged. Andrew Works, hanged. Rosa McBean, shot. Samuel Dillard, shot. Edward Fleming, hanged. One man name unknown, hanged. One man name unknown, hanged. Unknown, hanged. One man name unknown, hanged. Woman name unknown, hanged. Henry Bonnyman, shot. Archie Francis, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Johnson Speed, shot. George Wood, shot. William Jones, shot. Andrew Clark, shot. Richard Blake, shot. Richard Graham, shot. Jane Johnson, shot. William Shawn, shot. Joshua Francis, shot. John Davis, shot. Thomas Panton, shot. Sandy McPherson, shot. Boy Unknown, shot. Thomas McCall, shot. Maurice Jones, shot. William Edwards, shot. Nat Bryan, shot. James Bryan, shot. James Henry, shot.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
James Stewart, shot. George Cousins, shot. John Bartley, ang. John Barnett, ang. Toby Butler, ang. Abraham Cornwall, ang. Charles Fuller, hanged. Joseph Graham, hanged. George Grosset, hanged. Andrew Harris, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
My name is Benjamin Asamoah, President of Ghanaian Association in Jamaica. October 18, Williams Nicholas, Long Bay, shot by black soldiers without a trial. Richard Lindsay, shot. Richard Lindsay, shot. James West, shot. Brian King, shot. Thomas Homan, alias Cash, shot. David Beck, shot. Lord Strick Silver, shot. Moses Cornwell, shot. Francis Jacobs, hanged. Thomas Jones, hanged. Richard Kelly, hanged. Colin McDermott, hanged. John McGilvery, hanged. Frank M. Quinn, hanged. Duncan Stewart, hanged. William Stewart, hanged. Alexander Taylor, hanged. Simon Taylor, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Thomas Holgate, hanged. James McLaurin, hanged. James Morgan, hanged. George Thompson, hanged. William Bell, shot. Jacob Cousin, shot. William Francis, shot. Samuel Panton, shot. James Scott, shot. Williams Bogo, hanged.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. Go ahead, my brother, from the ACR.
All right. Robert Barkley, Morant Bay, hanged. James Betty, Morant Bay, hanged. Moses Bogle, Morant Bay, hanged. Paul Bogle, Morant Bay, hanged. Robert Brown, Morant Bay, hanged. Robert Brown, Morant Bay, hanged. James Bowie, Morant Bay, hanged. Stefan McCameron, Moranbay hang. Williams Chambers, Moranbay hang. David Douglas, Moranbay hang. James Gorhegans, Moranbay hang.
We call their names. Thank you. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Morning. Member of the African Cultural Renaissance Movement, UTEC. William Walt, John Wright, hung. James Williams was an African, shot. John Lanjan, shot. Dick Hall, shot. John Hall, shot. John Lawrence, shot. James Mackenzie, shot. William Winter, shot. Man name unknown, shot.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
Joseph Clark, hanged. Richard Wilson, hanged. George Craddock, hanged. Jeffrey Davis, hanged. Alexander Hamilton, hanged. Edward Howell, hanged. Charles Maine, hanged. John Panton, hanged. James Thomas, hanged. William Thorpe, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. A luta continua. Avitura is certa.
Before we go forward, the police them just
let me finish this motor because it's a somber and a sacred moment. We just want all the names. Yeah?
I just don't want us to forget that apart from those massacred, many languished in jail. And so today, I want us to remember Thomas Williams, Lendrick Wilson, George Anthony, Thomas Douglas, James Virgin, John Marble, William Gerard, Thomas Albert, alias Albert Bailey, Richard Vaughan, Francis Brown, James Isaac Burke, Samuel Jokey, Richard Affleck, Charles Smith, Henry Fraser, and more and more and more up to 1880, languishing in the General Penitentiary and other prisons around the island.
We call their names, bearing witness on behalf of our ancestors.
Now? Okay, John Gray, shot. Alexander Forsyth, shot. Hamilton Harris, shot. G.W. Gordon, hanged. Archie Bailey, hanged. Davis Bailey, hanged. John Blake, hanged. John Braun, hanged. William Braun, hanged. Billy Burton, hanged.
We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. Sister Amina.
William Stewart, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Samuel Phillips, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Robert Pike, 100 lashes and 10 years penal servitude. James Roberts, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Robert Clackchar, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Henry Bryan, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. James Newfield, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Jacob Dean, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. George Lindsay, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Isaiah Panton, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. Edward Hamilton, 100 lashes and 5 years penal servitude. James Cameron, 50 lashes and 5 years penal servitude.
We call their names. We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. We say never again. Never again. A luta continua. A luta continua. A luta continua. A victoria is certain, but victory is certain.
James Cameron, 50 lashes, 5 years penal servitude. Richard Kane, 50 lashes, 5 years penal servitude. Richard Berry, 50 lashes, 5 years hard labor. Thomas London Sr., 50 lashes, 5 years hard labor. Edward Clark, 50 lashes, 3 years hard labor. William Hamilton, 25 lashes, 12 months hard labor. William Wilson, 25 lashes, 12 months hard labor. George Burchell, 25 lashes, 3 years hard labor. William Irving, 25 lashes, 3 years penal servitude. Gilbert Clark, 50 lashes, 5 years hard labor. Richard Kelly, 50 lashes, 3 years hard labor. Thomas Jackson, 50 years, 10 years penal servitude. Richard Newell, 50 lashes, 3 years penal servitude. William Davis, 50 lashes, 5 years penal servitude. Michael Kirtland, 12 lashes, 5 years in the Kingston Reformatory. And Thomas Dunn, 13 lashes, 5 years in the Kingston Reform.
We call their names. We call their names. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors. And now for the women, the females who were sentenced to hard labor, etc. Esther McCain, 5 years hard labor. Henry McCain, 5 years hard labor. Maria Hunter, 5 years hard labor. Mary Bryan, 5 years hard labor. Margaret Pasley, 5 years hard labor. Nellie Steele, 12 months hard labor. Emily Hurry, 12 months hard labor. Ann Wash, 5 years hard labor. Maureen Robinson, 5 years hard labor. Mary Campbell, 5 years hard labor. Fanny Wellington, 5 years hard labor. Isabella Thompson, 5 years hard labor. Julia Donaldson, 5 years hard labor. Johanna Edwards, 5 years hard labor. Eleanor Lindsay, 5 years hard labor. Rosanna Cousins, 5 years hard labor. Sarah Brown, 5 years hard labor. Who to pick up these other women for Martha? We call their names.
Martha Affleck, 6 months hard labor. Rebecca Burke, 9 months hard labor. Elizabeth Burke, 6 months hard labor. Evelina Wilson, 6 months hard labor. Emily Walker, 6 months hard labor. Marie Walker, 6 months hard labor. Ann Geddes, 6 months hard labor. Mary Bailey, 5 years without hard labor. Ellie Lindsay, 6 months hard labor. Jane Brown, 6 months hard labor.
We call their names. We call their names.
We call their names. James Cameron, Richard Rain, Richard Berry, Thomas London Sr., Edward Clark, all sentenced to 50 lashes and 5 years hard labor. Richard Brown, 25 lashes. William Wilson, 25 lashes. George Burchell, William Irving, Gilbert Clark, Richard Kelly, 50 lashes. Thomas Jackson, 50 lashes. William Davis, 50 lashes. Henry Mackenzie, 50 lashes. Michelle Kirkland, 12 lashes, 5 years in Kingston Reformatory. Thomas Dunn. And Clinton will continue.
James Fraser, 100 lashes and 5 years hard labor. William Dick, 50 lashes and 3 years hard labor. Thomas London Jr., 100 lashes and 5 years hard labor. Alexander Gobidon, 50 lashes and 3 years hard labor. Robert Panton, 50 lashes and 5 years hard labor. Lambert Grant, 50 lashes and 5 years hard labor. Joseph Scott, 100 lashes and 5 years hard labor. Joseph Brewster, 100 lashes, 10 years hard labor. William Donnan, 100 lashes and 10 years hard labor. Richard Burke, 50 lashes and 3 years hard labor. Joseph Smith, 50 lashes and 5 years hard labor.
And Kabu, let me remind our people that far from Morant Bay, in the Cornwall County Jail, remember we have 3 counties, Cornwall, Middlesex, Surrey. In the Cornwall County Jail, Edmund Gassner was there, charged with seditious language, and he got 12 months imprisonment. Richard Signet, seditious language, 12 months imprisonment, so they couldn't even talk about protest. In the Middlesex County Jail, language James Cohagan. In the Morant District Prison, Eleanor Thomas, Cursor Williams, John Daly, Thomas Miles. And in Surrey County Jail, Austin Hennard, James Gardner, Alexander Fraser, Robert Grant, and 83 persons from Morant Bay awaited trial. And in the Falmouth District Prison, William Edwards was there, said to have been suspected as a rebel. And William Grant, George McIntosh, Samuel Clark, all in the Falmouth District Prison. I thank Jamoki Dorrit Abrams for helping us with this research.
Tribute to our ancestors. We bear witness on behalf of our ancestors, martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War.
All right.
We're coming to you live from Morant Bay as we pay tribute to the martyrs of the 1865 Morant Bay War. We're going to take a break with music. We have a survivors, Shane. I know you've got to go to ads, but could you give us that while we catch our breath and come to terms with what we just participated in right here in Morant Bay? We are the survivors, the black survivors, as we go to a break. You're inside of the...
All right, so here we are, remembering the names, the heroes of the Morant Bay War of 1865 right here in Jamaica, a time when there was great injustice on the descendants of the African slaves during that time. And Jamaica then ruled by a tyrannical Governor Edward John Eyre, to which we have posthumously sentenced him to eternal fire when we met 2 years ago in Morant Bay for what he did to quash the protests of the people at the time who were going through some serious downpressions here in Jamaica. And out of the Morant Bay War, led by Paul Bogle, we are here standing on the shoulders of those persons who fought for social justice and against social inequality. Yeah. Of course, you remember at that time, the Jamaican estate owners had asked the English to accept a higher price of sugar because workers were not slaves anymore and had to be paid a wage. And of course, when that happened, England turned to Cuba because slavery was still there. And things really got hard in Jamaica. We talk about toll roads. Well, one of the things that was instituted by the local government of the time was even a toll road to try and get offset taxes. So toll roads is not new in Jamaica. It first came about in 1859. But taxes were hard to collect because people were not working for free again. And led by Paul Bogle, led a delegation by foot to Spanish Town to see Governor Eyre. He refused to see him. And we all remember and recall what happened in that courthouse and the subsequent happenings where 900 people were rounded up and slaughtered. Mass grave behind the Morant Bay Courthouse. And of course, remember Governor John Eyre, that wicked, tyrannical governor. So, out of the Morant Bay War, there were a lot of things. We saw Peter Grant coming. He looked at the social injustices and the social conditions at the time, and the Rio Cobra Dam, the Morosco Road Reservoir, Kingston Public Hospital, the mental asylum, now known as Bellevue Hospital, and what we now know as the Jamaica Constabulary Force came out of that Morant Bay War. And we all know that the Jamaica Constabulary Force still has the mentality of 1865 when it came into existence. But we're here and we honor the lives and the sacrifices of those heroes of the Morant Bay War this morning here on the Africa Forum, Running African. And we are coming to a close to the program today. And of course, remember we started the program today looking back at the program that facilitated the discussion of the scheduled so-called apology for African tribal leaders' involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. And we heard from the member of the National Commission on Reparations and Pan-African Attorney at Law, Bert Samuels, the co-chair of the National Council on Reparations, Professor Vereen Shepherd. We heard from Cultural Ambassador Sister P, President of the World African Diaspora, Professor Leonard Jeffries. And of course, you just heard all the names that made that sacrifice with their lives in 1865 right here in Jamaica. So we are here at the end of the program, and we want to say thank you to our broadcast assistant, Shamar Preston, and of course also our assistant broadcast our assistant broadcast number 2, Vivian Strutt, and of course all our guests and all the persons who made the program possible today. Kabu Mahat Karu will be back next week. And coming up now is the one and only Dean of the Faculty, we call him, Mr. Big A. So until you hear from me again sometime in the future, Roger Haspel signing out for the Africa Forum this morning. And I want to say all the best.